One APIA Nevada is a grassroots nonprofit organization that advocates for policies empowering everyday Asian Pacific Islander Nevadans. Nevada is home to a growing APIA community, accounting for 1 in 10 voters. We are One APIA Nevada. Tonight's episode of Out in Front is brought to you by our season sponsors, Nevada State Education Association, One APIA Nevada, Silver State Voices, and Stefan and Marta Schmidt. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Out in Front with Battleborn Progress. It is our first of the year and my first Out in Front back from maternity leave. Very excited to be here. I'm very excited to be here hosting this OIF about this topic with this incredible panel. Nevada will have its first presidential preference primary. We're calling it the PPP. Forget the PPP from COVID times. We are now in the presidential preference primary PPP era. There will also be a GOP caucus. We'll get to that in a little bit. Coming up in just a few weeks on Tuesday, February 6, 2024. The PPP is a statewide process to choose the Democratic and Republican presidential candidates, kind of about that second part for the the November general election ballot. This transition from a caucus to a PPP comes from a bill that was passed in the 81st legislative session with Assembly Bill 126. So like I said, I want to make a note that the GOP will have its own caucus 2 days after. We're going to get to the why and the why of that all in a little bit. The candidates that choose to participate in the PPP will not be allowed to participate in the caucus and will have 0 delegates. So looking at you, Nikki Haley. Now, to help us explain all of the ins and outs of the PPP, we are joined by a few esteemed guests this evening. Thank you all so much for joining me. We are joined by Mark Velashin, the Deputy Secretary of Elections in the Secretary of State's office. We are joined by Jennifer Willett, the Senior Grassroots Manager of All Voting is Local, Noe Orozco, the Program Manager of Silver State Voices, and Lisa Lynn Chapman, our very own Anti-Disinformation Manager here at BBP. Thank you all so much for joining me. I'm going to go to you first, Mark, like we're old friends. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. We are honored to have you with us.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having us on here.
Yes. Can you start by explaining what the PPP is, what the presidential preference primary is, how it's different from years past, and how it's different from the primary that will be held in June?
Yeah, absolutely. So to start, the President's Preference Primary, or as you said, the PPP, I'm going to go with that also. It's the first one we've had since really about 1996 as a state. It is a new thing that came out of the passage of Assembly Bill 126, like you mentioned. And really, it's a closed primary only for the 2 major parties, for the Democratic and Republican parties, to help them identify who their general election candidates are going to be. And that process is a lot more complicated. It involves their conventions, but this is the state's opportunity for the state's voters to make their voices heard. And as you mentioned, that election comes up February 6th. It is a bit different in that it is a separate election from the June primary. We have primary elections. We've had them in the past. They were closed in the past. They are still closed, which means that, again, you can vote for a member of your major party, the Democratic or Republican Party, if you're affiliated with them. But the June primary will essentially have everybody else. And I think that's a very important distinction. We've already received some calls and questions. I got a sample ballot. It only has like 1 office on it. Was that an error? And so we clarified, no, June's still coming. You actually have 3 opportunities, 3 elections this year, each of which is equally important. But yes, the June primary will have the statewide, county, federal offices as well, some other ones. But the February 6th election, the presidential preference primary, will be strictly the presidential candidates that filed with our office in October.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that excellent explanation. You put it way better than I managed to in my little intro. That's what you're here for. I'm going to go round robin to each of you guys, and then we will, if there's any like natural places for you to jump in, please feel free to do so. Just let me know. Just wave your hand. Jennifer, I'm going to go to you next. There's been obviously a lot of confusion as to who can participate in the PPP, how they can participate. Can all voters participate in February? Are there certain limitations? Can you go ahead and explain that?
Sure. So the PPP, like Mark said, is for registered voters affiliated with the Democratic and Republican parties to select their nominees for the presidential election. So you have to be registered as a Democrat or Republican in order to participate. But after that, Nevada voters have the same options they do for every other election. You can vote by mail, you can turn in your mail ballot at the voting site. You can also vote in person, starting at early vote on January 27th, all the way up through election day on February 6th. If you're not registered ahead of time, you won't receive a mail ballot, but remember that you still always have the option to register when you go to vote. So just make sure to bring your Nevada or tribal ID if you need to register when you go to vote. Now, if you're registered independent and you want to vote, you're going to need to change your party affiliation to participate to select a nominee from either party. In addition to the PPP, the Republican Party is going to be holding a caucus, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit later. But we recommend that if you want more information on this, to go ahead and call your local GOP office. And the PPP is a chance to have your say in the nomination process for the presidential election. And we encourage you to exercise your right to vote and to make a plan to participate.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I see Mark nodding along with you. So you must have said something right. Awesome.
It's great.
No, I'm going to come to you. Silver State Voices is a partner that we value so much, especially as it comes to the work that y'all do around election protection and democracy work and voter education. I would love if you could kind of dive into any educational initiatives that SSV is undertaking, Silver State Voices is undertaking to inform Nevadans about the intricacies of the PPP and their rights on Tuesday, February 6th.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Shelby, and it's an honor to be in community with all the other panelists. If I could just real quickly just add something to what Jennifer had been saying. So as she had mentioned, right, with regards to the fact that you have to be registered with one of those two political parties in order to be able to receive the ballot. One of the things that the county elected officials are doing is they're sending a sample ballot to every registered voter. And so if I'm registered independent and I live in the same household as Jennifer and she's registered with one of the two major political parties, she's going to receive her official ballot as well as the sample, but I'm only going to receive my sample. So there's no confusion there or errors. It's just that I was registered independent. And if I want to participate in the PPP, I would have to update my registration the way that Jennifer had just mentioned it. So that is one of the things that we did see early on. When we saw that here in Clark County, they were indicating that they were going to be sending the sample ballots to every active registered voter. But going specifically to your question, so one of the things that we have been doing around the PPP, a lot of the focus is going to be educational. And so what we've done, and in partnership with the Institute for Progressive Nevada, IPN, is we've created and have provided a toolkit for all of our 20 coalition partners, 20 plus, so that they can go ahead and get all the information that is needed for the PPP. So before we created this toolkit, because of the nuances that have already been mentioned, we had to educate ourselves on, what is the PPP? How can this work? So we, started having several conversations with the Secretary of State's office. Mr. Volashin was one of those individuals, as well as some of the county election department officials. And once we had those conversations, we were able to be very thoughtful with regards to the information that we were providing. So one of the things that we have been doing is to what Jennifer had been mentioning, right? In that toolkit, it talks about how we're able to update our voter registration. It also is going to provide all the information as to where the early vote site locations are. As many of the viewers here know, that traditionally when we have early voting, it's a 2-week process. And for the PPP, it's actually only just 1 week. But another thing is, right, some of these polling locations may be shifting from one site that used to be there, traditionally, and for whatever the reason is, it's no longer a site this time around, or maybe they're alternating where two sites that are typically voting locations. And here in Clark County specifically, the one that's coming to mind is Pearson and Doolittle. Those polling locations traditionally are during early vote. This time around for the PPP, they are going to be alternating. And so in that toolkit, we do talk about the fact that voters should be mindful of that. Both of these are locations. It's just maybe if you're going one day, it might not be there and you'd have to go down to the other location.
Thank you so much. I know we really value the work that SSV does here at Battleborn Progress and with our sister organization, the Institute for Progressive Nevada. And I want to give a shout out right here. I know that our two organizations, the Institute for Progressive Nevada, our sister organization, and Silver State Voices, work together on the votesmartnv.org voter guide. And that is actually available for folks to visit right now. I know my team is going to go ahead and drop that in the chat. That is our nonpartisan voter guide with all the information that you need around the PPP. Just bare bones, what you need to know to be able to cast your vote on February 6th. Next, I'm going to go ahead and turn to Lisa. Lisa from our very own team, thank you so much for joining us. You are our disinformation superhero. You read it all, look at it all, make sure that we know what people are saying to try to sow distrust in our elections and how we can combat it. So, given the confusion surrounding the Republican caucus and the PPP, what do you expect to see in the disinformation space regarding the primaries and the caucus that the GOP is holding?
So we are already starting to see a lot of misinformation, not necessarily disinformation. Difference being misinformation is incorrect information that is coming out versus disinformation, which is intentional, trying to cause harm. Right now, the Nevada GOP is releasing sites that they don't necessarily have nailed down for their caucus and things like that. So we're seeing a lot of just misinformation coming out. So that's causing a lot of the confusion. And the poor county clerks are having to tell everyone again and again, this is only for Republicans and Democrats. And even though there is a Republican slate on the PPP, you can vote there, but it's not going to do anything for the delegates right now. You have to go to caucus. And so they are constantly doing that. And so one of the big things that we're seeing right now is that the PPP, and Mark's going to go, is going to be fraudulent because they don't have a voter ID, and that they're allowing for same-day registration, which you can't do at the caucus. You cannot. Also, they are stating that the caucus is the only true way to get everyone's opinion about who they want, which isn't true. We know that in the past, when we've had presidential primaries, there's been more participation than ever with the caucuses. And so that's a lot of the disinformation and the conversations that are coming out right now.
Well, thank you for all that you do to track all of that so that we know where we need to pay extra attention and get the good word of what actually is the case around the primary, the PPP, out to folks. Mark, I'm going to come back to you kind of in that same vein, kind of related to what Lisa was saying. What is your office doing to assist voters with any questions that they have around the PPP? Where can voters go if they need to get like an official word on some questions that they may have?
No, that's a great question, and certainly something that I know Secretary Aguilar has been working with all of us and the clerks and registrars across the state to really kind of hammer out, right? Voter education is extremely important, especially given, like you highlighted already, right? We have 3 elections coming up this year. We want to make sure voters understand where to go, what their role is, and the differences between them. When it comes to the president's preference primary, first and foremost, if there are questions, we try to make it as easy as possible on our website. The Secretary's website is nvsos.gov. So we have a kind of a single one-stop repository of information with dates. There's links to the county voting locations and a number of other information items, timelines. Of course, the election results will be published there as well. When folks call asking or email us about the differences between the PPP and the caucus, and there's certainly some generalities that we can speak to here in a minute just to make sure we clarify it. But really, if it comes to where's the caucus happening in our county, we just like Lisa mentioned, we direct them back to the either the NVGOP or their county party. The website or the phone number, especially because as things change, or maybe they haven't changed, but we want to make sure that those voters, regardless of which process they're trying to take part in, are getting the accurate information. So we again focus very heavily and will educate everybody on the PPP, on their county, on where they're going, what the differences. Just like Noe mentioned, right? Why it used to be the library. I could vote at the library before, but not now. What's going on? And we explain limitations in poll workers. Have you signed up to be a poll worker yet? We really could use the help. Your county election official could use you. So please reach out. But we talk about the individuals on the ballot. We talk about the timelines associated with it. And we remind folks that they, again, when in doubt, if they haven't checked their voter registration, we encourage them to do so at registertovote.nv.gov. So they can go on there and make sure that they're still affiliated. Maybe their address or their apartment number has changed, just to make sure that the ballot shows up on time. But that education and outreach piece is absolutely critical. And when in doubt, whether checking the secretary's website, emailing us at nvelect@sos.nv.gov, or calling 775-684-5705. Any of those options, really, we're here to help and eager to provide information about any and all elections within the state.
So to that end, what can organizations like All Voting is Local, BBP, or IPN and SSV do to assist your office, take the burden off of y'all to answer all these questions and empower us to help you? What can we be doing?
Well, and that's also a great question, right? Because again, when you have 1.9 million voters across the state and new folks showing up every day and registering and wanting to be involved in the process, accurate information is absolutely critical. It frankly gives all of us a sigh of relief, and it makes our lives easier when folks are hearing accurate and updated information. I would recommend getting that information off the website or reaching out. As mentioned, we can collaborate. We're willing to collaborate with anybody across the aisle. Simply to make sure that folks, their voters, rural, urban, north, south, east, and west, understand what's going on this year, how the PPP works, or even the differences between that and the primary or the timelines for the general election. We're already getting questions about those too. One thing that hasn't come up yet, I'm a little bit surprised, cross my arms here in a slightly joking manner, nobody has mentioned NVEs. So the secretary has a website, the Nevada Effective Absentee System for Elections. It's another option in addition to the 1 week of early voting for in-person, the mail ballots that will go out to every active registered voter, the 12 hours of election day voting. NVEs is available for our military and overseas voters, as well as tribal voters who live on a colony or reservation, or voters with a disability. And in fact, at last count, there were over 100 individuals who, since we started the system a little bit right around the 45-day mark before the election, a little bit before that, closer to 50 days, over 100 individuals have already cast their ballots to the counties using that system. So again, highlighting the utility in that system for both, again, our service members, their family members overseas, as well as, again, tribal voters and the voters with a disability that are able to use it.
Well, I'm so sorry that we forgot about that. Thank you so much for bringing that to our attention. We will do our best to not disappoint you moving forward. Jennifer, I'm going to circle back to you. What is All Voting is Local doing for the PPP? How are y'all helping voters participate and making sure that they are well informed ahead of February 6th?
Sure. So we've been working hard at trying to get all the information out about the PPP across the state so everybody feels informed. For example, recently we joined our partners to visit tribal nations to discuss the upcoming PPP, make sure their new polling places are all set up, and we definitely always discuss ease too, Mark. We'll also be launching digital ads to run all across the state that will serve as an information page about the PPP, so people can go, click on it, and get more information. And once the PPP starts, we're going to be heavily involved with our friends at Silver State Voices in their election protection program. And we'd love more volunteers, so let us know if you want to do that with us. Also, on the first day of early vote, we're going to be hosting a youth-led Get Out the Vote party in partnership with Upward Bound at Ardmore Park near the Sparks Library in Washoe County. So come on out January 27th from 12 to 3. It's going to be tons of fun. We're going to be there answering questions with free food, and then you can go across the street and vote at the Sparks Library. So we know this is a new process. We try to respond to everything that comes our way. And if we can be helpful to anyone, including voters, community groups, media, whoever, please let us know.
Thank you. I want to dig in a little bit more to something that you mentioned about improvements to tribal polling locations. Can you describe those improvements for us, and how will those help tribal members participate in the PPP?
Definitely. So during the recent legislative session, 2 new laws were passed to support tribal voting accessibility. The first law streamlines the process of setting up a polling place within their tribal nation. So previously, tribal nations were required to apply to the county clerk for a polling place, which sometimes worked, but sometimes didn't. So now all tribal nations automatically qualify for a polling place, and these polling places will be held on the dates and times that work best for them. They just need to work with their clerk to establish it. And then among the many things the second law does is that it authorizes tribal members to utilize Nevada Ease. So this is going to do 2 things. It's going to allow tribal members to register to vote online with their tribal ID, which was not possible before. And it also, like Mark said, allows tribal members to vote online, just like our military members and people with disabilities. So these improvements are so exciting because they ease the voting process for tribal members, allow them to vote in their nations, and it eliminates the needs for really previously long drives to distant polling places. And the Secretary of State's office has been so awesome in advocating for all of these changes, and we thank them so much for leading and making voting easier for our tribal nations.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Noe, I'm going to come to you, kind of jumping off of improvements that your amazing organizations have made for voters across the state. Can you share some information about the resources that SSV, that Silver State Voices, has developed to... Sorry, my baby wants to participate.
Let the baby participate. It's never too young, or you're never too young to learn about voting.
Show him off really quick. Show off the baby while Noe talks about the work that SSV does to
get a baby.
Improve access for voters.
For sure. So one of the things that you had already just briefly mentioned, Shelby, was that VoteSmart NV website. And so what we have done in the past, just for the primaries and for the general elections, we have the voter guide website. And in there, we have a list of all of the candidates that are running for office, and the ballot initiatives, and how voters are able to participate in all the different offices, and why it's important to vote all the way down the ballot. For the presidential preference primary, as I had mentioned at the very beginning, we are making it a little just bit more educational in nature, just because this may be the first time voters are voting in this type of an election. And as Mr. Voloshin mentioned, right, it's 3 times that they're able to participate and ensure that their voice is heard. So that VoteSmart NV website is prepared with you all, BBP and IPN, and if you did mention it's live already, right, Shelby? Just want to confirm. Yes. All right.
Live.
So votesmartnv.org is the website where folks can go. The second thing that we end up doing with regards to resources, we have social media. This is where we highlight all of the important dates. One of the things that our amazing communications department with Silver State Voices is doing right now is creating, in partnership with you all, social media graphics that we're able to then just amplify on there, that says like the who, what, when, why, where. Again, just to really provide an overview on why it's important to participate in the PPP, and also explaining the fact that you're participating now, but that doesn't mean, when June rolls around, you're going to be like, oh no, I already voted just a couple of months ago. And then the last thing that we also, one of the tools that we utilize that's on the VoteSmart NV website is ZMaps. And essentially for this, what I believe Clark County had done in like 2018, maybe 2016, they had a resource where voters were able to type in the address where they were at, and it would essentially tell them where their closest polling location is. Unfortunately, they haven't utilized it since then, but through the ZMaps website, we were able to upload all of the polling locations in Clark County and in Washoe County, the 2 most populous counties. And in there, voters are able to go and utilize that website. We just provide the link for them, and they could type in their address, and they're able to find where the closest polling locations are in there. It also, on the back end for us, we're able to put the hours, for the whole entire week of early voting, as well as election day. If the hours do fluctuate, or if maybe the voting center is not open, we're able to, if they click on that little pin, it's able to let them know the hours that voting center is open. So those are just a couple of the resources that we are utilizing for the PPP this time around.
Awesome, thank you. And you know that we value SSB so much as a partner, and we just are in awe of the work that y'all do. So thank you so much for everything. Lisa, I'm going to come back to you. Noe just talked about how people can get accurate information about the PPP and our elections this year. For those on the internet mainly who are spewing inaccurate information, what is the best way for our organizations, for people on the ground, people invested in our democracy, to combat disinformation regarding voting? How can we make sure that folks are getting accurate information about their rights at the polling place?
So first off, I'm going to say, when you see someone who is posting something that is inaccurate, let's not engage with it. We don't want to push the algorithms to make it more visible to other people. So when you put the angry face on, or you write up the nasty little comment calling someone that they are not smart or whatever, that's just going to make it go further and further. And it's not going to do any good, because people who are living in this disinformation space, we want to get the people who are in the middle, who are swayable, right? It's harder to get the people who are set in of this is how it's going to be and everything else. But as we start pulling people forward, that line gets moved a little bit more and more. So first, don't do that. Then on your own, you are a trusted messenger. That's one thing that people don't understand, that every single one of us are trusted messengers to our friends and families and the people who are in your friend groups. And so put out your own information, right, that you get from Silver State Voices, from the secretaries, from All Voting is Local, from Vote Smart NV. You want to be able to put, and then we have so many good resources that we've already talked about, and you have trusted resources. Even the newspaper is going to be a trusted news source, because they want that to be accurate and out for people. So that's the kind of stuff that you want to push, not necessarily what so-and-so said, so I'm just going to put that up. You want to take a moment to just verify what is being said, whether or not it is true or not true, before you go ahead and repost. And I hope that makes sense to everybody. But remember, most importantly, you are a trusted messenger, so don't betray that trust. Take the time to put out your own accurate information. And the sources that we've talked about are the sources that you can go to get that accurate information.
Shelby, may I add something to that too, please?
Go for it.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with what Lisa was saying. There's another element too that I find myself having to apply over the last couple of years too. It really comes down to a question of having the moral courage to speak up with truthful information. I found that if I'm standing in line at the grocery store and I hear someone say, I think isn't early voting like sometimes, and then they'll say like the wrong date. It becomes an option. Do I just keep my mouth shut? Do I just stand here with my milk and whatever, or do I turn around and say, actually, I think early voting starts on the 27th and actually goes to second, and then you have 12 hours on election day. Some people say, well, I don't even want to bring up or discuss elections. It's just too hot of a topic. And the next thing you know, it's, well, what's your political affiliation? But at the end of the day, I found that by providing purely factual information and then leaving it at that, if the conversation grows, just saying, hey, I'm sorry, that's all I know, I don't really get involved otherwise, or something like that, to try to diffuse the situation. But by providing truthful, accurate information like that, there's an opportunity for discussion and dialogue. And oftentimes when folks find out, I'm talking to them and they're like, who are you that is so wise in the ways of elections, sort of thing, right? And I'm like, work for the Secretary of State, and he takes it very seriously, and he wants us to make sure that everybody of every party knows the truth, period. And then questions will come up. Well, are you, even though I'm this party or that? But yeah, like totally. We Americans need to know about their constitutional rights, period. And that means it starts with being informed so that you can make decisions about the candidates based on your, whatever rubric you come up with. But at the very least, I want to make sure that you understand the dates, the times, the locations, so that you can take part appropriately. And oftentimes when we have those discussions and they kind of open their minds to that, they realize like, okay, if this guy is willing to turn around and engage me with his milk in his hand or whatever, right, then maybe we could reach out to them, and it becomes more of a trusted source, right, and trying to help build a bridge, so to speak, to again get us back to the table to discuss, allow those discussions to happen outside of focusing on the questions about the when and the where and the how of the elections.
Thank you so much for that. And I want to stay with you to more talk about your office. And I want to make sure that we are not doing any disinformation here. Can you explain the difference between the PPP and then the PPP both the Democratic and Republican PPP are operated by your office? The caucus is not. Can you kind of discuss that for me?
Yeah, certainly. So again, as I mentioned, right, the presidential preference primary is executed according to Title 24, which is kind of our shorthand name for the 9 chapters of the revised statutes that govern elections in the state. The presidential preference primary, because it's a federal primary, also falls under the federal laws as well. And that's what Secretary Aguilar administers as the chief officer of elections for our state. The caucus process that some folks have asked is not governed by state law or federal law. It's essentially a private organization's means to identify the will of their voters, their members. So again, 2 very separate processes. They're 2 separate events, for that matter, and held on different days. And that's also because it's a private organization, they fall under different sets of rules. So we encourage voters that have questions about the caucus to reach back to their party to get the details on those rules. Just that, again, we don't know or govern or really have a lot to say with that. But in regards to the presidential preference primary, outside of that, and we get questions too. Well, is there merit in having 2? Again, from Secretary Aguilar's point of view, the idea that we're getting the will of the people have a vote and a voice through this process, and the fact that the accessibility of the PPP is what it is with the use of NVEs, which, by the way, is at nves.gov if you're a covered voter, and then the 1 week of early voting and mail ballots going to every active registered voter and 12 hours of voting on election day. That's going to afford both major parties an opportunity to truly see what their voters, how they feel. And that, again, ultimately just becomes a tool for the parties to go into their conventions later on this year to make an informed decision about whoever they want to be their candidates for the general election. Again, rest assured, the PPP element of it, like I said, will be governed by law, administered by professionals who are dedicated. I've lost count how many clerks and registrars I've talked to today. And for those of you that don't know, up here in northern Nevada, it's a bit of a snow day, right? You got about a foot of snow outside, and a number of county and state offices were closed. Work continued. We continue to talk and discuss and collaborate to ensure that the election that's coming up is done professionally and accurately to in accordance with state and federal laws, so that voters can have confidence in that process. But again, ultimately 2 separate processes. So it's again important that when asked, we certainly encourage folks to regard or refer to the state for the state-run one, and then back to the party for the caucus.
Thank you so much for clearing all that up. I just want to make sure that we ourselves are not doing any disinformation here. Jennifer, I'm going to go to you. How can folks get involved with All Voting is Local to help out the work that y'all will be doing around the PPP and our elections to come?
Yeah, we love people helping us out, especially as we work with our other partners to staff volunteer events. So we always have something going on, and we're more and more across the state. So You can contact me at jennifer@allvotingislocal.org, and I will make sure to get you to the right person who is doing events in your area. But please contact us. We like to have fun, we like to do events, and we like to make a difference in the communities we work in.
Thank you so much. Noe, I'm going to ask you the same question. How can folks get involved with SSV, especially around the election protection program? But first, I have a different question for you, and then I'm going to come back to that question. Given the unique characteristics of the Nevada electorate, how does Silver State Voices tailor your educational efforts to effectively reach our diverse communities and make sure that everybody is included in the primary process?
Sure. So as I had mentioned at the beginning with one of the first questions that you had asked me, Silver State Voices, we collaborate with over 20 different 501c3 organizations throughout Nevada. They emphasize grassroots efforts and focus on BIPOC communities. And so these are the organizations that are in our communities day in and day out, providing support. All Voting is Local is one of those, Institute for Progressive Nevada, and several other of the organizations that we collaborate with. And so, they're pretty much the ones that are, in the communities day in and day out, and in having that conversation with them, they provide us the respective what their respective communities needs and wants are. And if they did not, like, one of the things that they did not understand with regards to the PPP was how it differed from the caucus. Mr. Velashan already eloquently explained that, and that was one of the things that we had done when we were trying to figure that out. We were reaching out to the Secretary of State's office, to the county offices, trying to figure that out. And then from there, we were able to relay that information to the communities that are day in and day out engaging with their respective communities. And we've translated the toolkit that we had mentioned in English and Spanish with the primary and the general election. Other things that we've done with that votesmartnv.org website is we've translated it into multiple languages, English, Spanish, to Tagalog, Vietnamese, Korean, Thai, and I think Chinese. And that's just, for the primary and the general. This time for the PPP, we didn't get a chance to circle around and do that. But that's not to say that we're not actively engaging with, one of our table partners, the Asian Community Development Council, to ensure that all this information is provided to them so that then they can go ahead and share that with their respective communities. So that's one of the things that, we're doing to ensure. Because as many of your viewers are aware, Nevada is the third most diverse state in the country. And so we are very intentional with trying to ensure that all of the respective communities have the right information, the accurate information in a timely manner. And so we work with these partners that day in and day out are actually engaging with them to ensure that their needs are being met.
Awesome. And then can you tell us a little bit more about the election protection program that SSV runs?
Sure. So, one of the things, and Jennifer actually had mentioned it very briefly. So we do have an election protection program that Silver State Voices, along with the ACLU of Nevada, we co-run, and All Voting is Local has been a very instrumental partner as well. In Washoe and Clark, primarily is where we are focused on. These are nonpartisan volunteers that we are seeking to recruit to help volunteer. They are not paid. This is all a volunteer capacity. And essentially what we do is there are some historical sites, some traditional sites where there is a long line of voters that they're very popular sites. Others, there have been historical issues, if not issues that are I guess not issues in the sense of in a negative way. It's just sometimes the machines go down. Sometimes, there's other issues that kind of arise. And sometimes there is, some very intentional issues that come up with, voter intimidation, suppression, and that type of stuff. And what we do with these volunteers, we engage with them. We educate them on some of these new laws, as Jennifer had mentioned. And we send them out to some of these high priority voting centers with the intention of just kind of being the eyes and ears in these voting centers. We do not expect or want them to go and engage with, any individuals that are being a little bit rowdy or anything like that. If there are issues where the machines go down, we do, have a process set in place so that they can reach out to us, so that maybe we can reach out to the elections department, letting them know, hey, at 123 Main Street, that polling location is actually not functioning right now. We just wanted to flag that to you in case you didn't. And there have been some instances, both in Clark and in Washoe, where we have reached out to the elections department and they were unaware that, you know, some of those issues were going on. And so, as I mentioned, that program that we run, it is entirely nonpartisan and it's all volunteer based. And we are looking for some individuals that are interested in that for the duration of the early vote period, as well as on election day. If any folks are interested, they're more than welcome to reach out to BBP, myself, Jennifer, anyone that they'd be interested, whose contact information they have. My contact, Noe, Noe at silverstatevoices.org, if they would be interested, and happy to talk a little bit more about that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mark, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about folks can volunteer to become poll workers. How else can everyday Nevadans who are invested in our democracy get involved with the Secretary of State's office or in becoming a poll worker and assisting in our democratic processes?
Excellent question. Absolutely. And really, you know, when folks say, you know, tangibly, what can I do or my family, you know, the very first step that I tell them is validate, look at, and make sure that your voter registration is accurate and updated at registertovote.nb.gov. That simple step by itself helps keep our voter rolls clean, which saves the counties and states money, making sure that the ballot goes to the right voter. It expedites the process when you're checking in if you've moved between one county and the other. So that very simple step really is a very important one for voters. The second one, poll worker, absolutely. And this is, again, something not just for registered voters, right? Of course, individuals that are 16 and up, high school students can also act as a poll worker. I will tell you that this is something that Secretary Aguilar has got his eye on very closely. There's a number of poll worker shortages across our state. And again, your county clerk will have information and eagerly want to talk to individuals about helping out at the polls. What does that look like? Your clerk will have a list of roles for you to fill. They'll talk with you about which one works best for your schedule, so that if you have one day that you can volunteer, if you have multiple days, if maybe it's just in the afternoons, those sorts of things, or maybe it's you and your spouse or a friend, you know, you want the two of you to be together. Like there are options out there so that your county clerk or registrar would very much like to have your involvement. And again, that's 3 times this year, right? It's February, June, and November. So it's important, even if you're like, well, February, you know, I'm still in school, I'm not able to, or maybe up here it's snowing and it's miserable and I don't want to go outside. You know, again, June or November, there's other opportunities. But even beyond that, right? There's the option for an individual to be an election observer, right? Anyone can go into the polls to observe. We have individuals come from other countries to observe America's elections across the country, and we definitely have some of those individuals come to our state to see the great work that your county election officials are doing. So there's observer opportunities, and oftentimes your party may you know, help support that, but you can go as an individual. And then really another last step, and this is almost more kind of very similar to updating your voter registration. If you do receive a mail ballot, you know, we are a very transient state. And if you do receive a mail ballot at your house that is not for you, maybe for a previous tenant or someone that lived there, or maybe even one of your kids who's moved on or, you know, is in college or something or out of state, and is registered in another location, the very simple act of writing "not at this address" and "return to sender" on that envelope and then putting it back in the mail, that starts a process mandated by law that, again, assists in keeping our voter rolls clean. A lot of folks don't know that you can write "return to sender" on a ballot. I guess it's been a minute since Elvis made his song, right? So not everybody's aware of it. But that is a key federally required part of the process. It relates to receiving undeliverable election mail. So, you know, I think those 4 options. You know, if somebody were going to, and really when people do ask me what can be done, kind of depending on their level of interest and availability, you know, there's usually at least 2 in there that they should be able to help out with.
And we had a question in the chat just really quickly. To be a poll worker, do you need to be a citizen or an eligible voter to participate? I believe Noe also, they were wondering if you need to be registered or a citizen to participate in election protection. So, Mark, can you tackle the first part and then we'll go to Noe?
Yeah, absolutely. So county, there are county specific requirements. Some counties require that you are a registered voter in that county, unless you're a high school student, of course, because 16 to 17.9-year-olds can't obviously register. But otherwise, again, there are some specific requirements But yeah, the bottom line, again, reaching out to the county, they'll clarify the specifics, the timelines, the needs. In some cases, right, depending on the role, they may need you to be able to lift certain weights. Nothing, it's not like 500 pounds or anything, crazy, but you may have to be there early in the morning or late at night, depending on your shift. So there are unique requirements that, frankly, the best bet is to just reach out to the county and they'll give you the details.
And for regards to the election protection nonpartisan program that we have, no, they do not need to be active registered voters, citizens as well. It could be legal permanent residents. To Mr. Velasquez's point about just the level of engagement that community members are trying to do, this would be potentially one of them, right? With regards to the poll workers, obviously they do get paid and there's shifts and things like that. But if someone just says, you know what, I don't have enough time, I only got 2 hours that I can essentially, give, and I want to be invested in this, in my democracy. This could be one of those avenues that they're able to do it. And so, we're always looking for some of these volunteers, I think we're good there.
Thank you so much. All right, we're just going to go to some final thoughts, and then I'm going to let y'all go. It is almost bedtime that I need to go put my little baby to sleep. So, Jennifer, I'm going to start with you. Can you give us some final thoughts about the PPP and how folks can gear up for the election year ahead?
Yeah, I think the PPP is really exciting. We're the first in the West. So this is your opportunity to have your say on who your nominee is going to be for president. It's easy to let that go, but why not have a say in it? And be a part of the new process. We're a pro-voter state, so that's really exciting. There's so many different ways you can vote. We make it easy for people. So go ahead and pick your nominee and go out there and vote.
Thank you so much. And Lisa, I'm going to come to you next. What do you have to say to folks that are maybe feeling a little bit discouraged about the disinformation or misinformation that they're seeing and want a little injection of hope for the election year ahead?
Absolutely. So first off, I'm going to say, use the trusted resources. Where do you find them? We've given you tons of them, right? So go ahead and go to the SOS site, go to Vote Smart Nevada, go to Silver State Voices, go to all of these different resources online, go to your county website. And the biggest thing I'm going to say is know the process. Get to know the process. As you know what happens, you're not going to be fooled by any of that disinformation. So when you go and you visit the counting site and you watch them, you see what's involved and you learn about what's involved, you understand that those claims that are made about voter fraud, they're not true, right? And you can see those and you can learn those. And so take the time just to get to know things, learn the process, visit the different websites from the county and from the people here, and you're going to be good to go. And vote in the primary, and vote in the primary in June, definitely, because those are really important on who's going to be representing you. So
thank you so much. And Noe, I'm going to come back to you. What do you have to say to folks at home that are ready to vote in the PPP? Any final thoughts you want to share?
Sure. So if they are already ready to vote and know all the intricacies of the presidential preference primary, I would encourage them to either go to the county websites or even to reach out to us and see how they can continue to engage in this process. Whether it's being a poll worker, whether it's being one of the nonpartisan volunteers, or even if they know anybody, because as Mr. Velasquez had mentioned, right, with regards to the different languages and the language access part of it, even some of the nonpartisan program that we run, we are always looking for those volunteers, but really would just be letting them know that they can continue to engage in their democracy once they have cast their ballot. And if they're even if they are unsure how they're going to go or how that process is going to go, as Lisa had mentioned, right, there's a lot of valuable resources out there for the community to be able to utilize, and votesmartnv.org is one of those. The Secretary of State's website is another one, and then the county websites are going to be just wealth of knowledge.
Thank you so much. And I want to flag that votesmartnv.org, our nonpartisan voter guide with Silver State, or the Institute for Progressive Nevada's nonpartisan voter guide with Silver State Voices, is now live. We will be updating that for the primaries in June and for the general election in November. Mr. Voloshin, last but not least, I'm going to come to you. Thank you so much for joining us again. Any final thoughts for folks on getting engaged and doing their civic duty at the polls?
I think that the final thought I would leave you with is that, again, even if you're maybe not planning on voting during the president's primary, if you're registered with the minor party, I just really encourage everyone to validate, their voter registrations at registertovote.nv.gov. It's such an important part. You hear about the PPP, you're starting to think elections now that the New Year's, come and gone. Now's the time to check. Don't wait till November and it's the 1st of November all of a sudden and you haven't done it yet. Like the sooner you do it, the better off you'll be. Encourage your friends to do it as well, and try to make that part of your routine conversation. And mentioning it in passing, so that you can encourage others. I think that's such a critical part of the process, and again helps immeasurably in ways that people don't even, I think, understand or realize. But yeah, making sure that your voter registration is accurate is extremely important. And then just like everybody else on here said, using those trusted sources, going to the Secretary of State's website. Listening to truthful, accurate information is always key. And this is going to be a year where it's important to focus on the truth. And having those sort of trusted sources can be a really important thing to do. So kind of an understatement of the year, perhaps, but updating your voter registration, I'll say is the final thing, please.
Thank you so much. That is a perfect note to end on, but I'm going to ruin it by doing one more plug for votesmartnv.org. The other websites that have been mentioned are also excellent, nonpartisan, unbiased sources of information, but votesmartnv.org is one that I love the most. I'm sorry. We will be updating it as we get closer to the June primary, as we get closer to November. And we are so stoked to be back with OIF this year. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us, and we will see y'all next time.